Okay, welcome to round 2. We are on a draw against an unknown opponent. We have two Wastelands, one Force of Will, and a Murktide and a Bauble. I think the hand is decent. The Surveillant is not pretty good, but it's fine, and especially with two Wastelands, so it really depends on the matchup. And I think it's a fine hand to keep on a draw. Our opponent is leading here with a Tundra. So we take a look with the bauble and see what is our opponent playing. We are wasting the Tundra here. So our opponent showed us a Tamio. So it could be some Jeskai control build, or maybe Cephalid breakfast, or maybe some Esper variant tempo. So it's not quite sure what he's especially on. And on our second turn, we can't waste because our opponent played the island, and I think it's a good spot to play our surveillant because we do not have any kind of clock. We have protection in form of Force of Will, and on our next turn we can brainstorm and ponder, and our opponent plays the shown Tamio, so we have to deal with that. So countering the Tamio is also, I think, not a good option because it's more or less a losing fight. We need really pressure on the board. We have Murktide, so we are working towards our Murktide to deal with the Tamio. And here I'm just deploying the Delver so that we can maybe brainstorm at the end of turn, bring the Delver to flip. And we'll see what is our game from here. A cutter would be really fine, and our opponent is showing us an Undercity Sewers. This threw me a little bit off because I found really awkward. Why is there a black duelant in the deck? So I thought maybe it's a kind of splash for Bowmaster. So I was not quite familiar with the black splash. And here we are brainstorm on our upkeep because I want to keep the fetchland alive. And we flipped the Delver. And here I'm going to Preodine or Ponder to search deeper for Cutter, and also to put as many spells in our graveyard so that we can deploy a fast Murktide. And here I'm attacking first to see if our opponent wants to fetch the Mystic Rainforest. And in the end, I responded to the fetch and wasting the Undercity Sewers just to make sure that our opponent is not grabbing another color with his fetchland. So we cut him off color. So it just has two islands and the Undercity Sewers is gone. Our opponent is attacking here with the Tamio, generating one clue. We have a Delver on board, and here's the Brainstorm to flip the Tamio. And here it's important that our opponent doesn't show us any kind of color in form of white or black. So I'm thinking that maybe you can fight over the Brainstorm, but I really want to make sure that we can resolve our Murktide or maybe Cutter. On the next turn, if we draw a land, we can deploy Cutter and Preodine, backed up by Days. And our opponent is playing here another Tamio, not flipped, and with a flipped Tamio, so I really need to force here to that our Delver can deal with the flip Tamio, and I choose the Force of Will here because I really want to make sure that if I draw land, I can deploy Cutter and Pyrodine. If we dazed here, we can't do the play, and the daze will also protect our Cutter on our turn, so it's a trade-off. And here we are generating the token. We see a Bauble and a Ponder. I think it's both decent. I play the Bauble to get some more Browse trigger and draw into the Ponder on top. And our opponent showed us a Cephalid breakfast. So we are really down here. We deal with the Tamio. So she's gone. Our opponent showed us a Cephalid breakfast, so he needs Encore. So he played the Saga, and here's the Encore and Cephalid in hand. And we only have Days as protection, so if we played it differently and countered with the Days, we maybe would have our Force. But that's the matchup. You apply Pleasure, Hope that your interactive spells are enough, and our opponent found here a good spot to assemble and initiative his combo. So on this point, I'm just looking at his build. We see a Cable Therapy that explains the black mana. And also, I want to make sure if our opponent does not have Tassa in hand, and even if he has enough Necromöber that he can execute the combo. So it's often good to just get your opponent to the motions and see what his build is consist of. So we see a Murktide region, for example. We see the Cable Therapy, so we have a clue what are his threats. And here he showed me the Oracle. So Oracle is not in hand, and therefore we can concede and move to game 2. So playing against Cephalid Breakfast is difficult because you want to treat it not as a combo deck, you want to treat it as a creature deck, because the combo exists of creatures, and so I'm just boarding here the Pyroblast and the Unholy Heat to have more interaction against the combo. You can also make an argument for boarding Surgical Extraction to deal with the combo execution. I think it's fair, it's a good point to make. But in the past, the boarding plan was so that you're just treating it as a creature deck. It could have been changed. It depends on the build, because we do not saw any kind of Stoneforge Mystic. So I'm not sure whether this is a bot tech, or maybe they can bring more Stoneforge Mystic in. And we just run that configuration and see if we make an argument for maybe more surgical extractions. It's kind of experience, so I decided to just go with the Pyroblast and the Unholy Heat. I think it's fine. And here we make sure that our Dragon Rage Chandler will get to Delirium so that we have a decent clock. So we are quite one type short with the Dragon Rage Chandler. Our opponent is playing really passively with Brainstorm and Fetchland up. But we have a good spot. We have a Lightning Bolt, we have Pyroblast, and we have additional threat in form of Murktide or maybe a Delver of Secrets, and a Wasteland if our opponent needs Color Source or Urza Saga here. And we draw additional Force of Will as backup. So from this point on, we can lead with, we can waste our own Wasteland and apply the Murktide Regent that I was thinking about here, but I played it more conservatively, just playing the Delver out because I was really scared of Urza Saga, because I don't want to deal with the tokens, and it's also a kind of clock if our opponent goes to chapter 2. He has the Shuko, and so I was willing to wait for the Wasteland and not going all in with the Murktide. And here is the opponent's Murktide we saw in the graveyard. So we can fight over it on the stack or just get rid of Pyroblast. And I think it's a good time to make sure we Wasteland first and then apply the Pyroblast in our turn to play maybe around days. Or we can all in on the Pyroblast on the end step of our opponent. That is what I'm considering here, the timing of the Pyroblast. And I decided to go in my turn in the upkeep to make sure play around days. I'm not quite sure whether it's right, but that was the feeling here. We saw a Lightning Bolt. It's not perfectly good, but it will flip the Delver. So we keep it on top. So Delver is flipped, Murktide is dealt with, and we have Force of Will with Murktide Regent. I'm not quite sure whether Murktide Regent will ever get to work in this game because our clock is fast enough. If we reach Delirium, we have 6 power on board, which is a 2-turn clock. Our opponent is playing Prismatic Ending on the Delver of Secrets, and here I'm willing to fight over it because if the Delver is gone, our clock is pretty slow, and we see if our opponent wants to fight over it. He's thinking hard and decided not to. So we go to our turn. We draw the Volcanic Island, which we kept on top because so that we can execute the double Lightning Bolt. And here is the main question, how aggressive you want to play it. I attack first and wait for the reaction so that I have the full option to play double lightning bolt into Delver, into Dragon Rage Chandler, and our opponent played the Hydroblast first. So I never have to show my opponent the option of playing lightning bolt to get to Delirium. So we have 6 damage in hand, 3 on the board. So our opponent has to deal with the Delver of Secrets or execute his combo. If our opponent will execute his combo, it's protected. We have 2 layers of protection. And our opponent is just applying an Ursa Saga, which is not enough. And here I'm going to considering whether it's worth it to play the cutter. And I think it's not really needed because I was really worried about to tap out with the cutter, only have 1 red available, and that our opponent will just execute the combo and kill us. And the feeling was right. Our opponent played the Orim's Chant, and if we play the cutter, we are dead maybe here, and so we can play double lightning bolt on his turn. Our opponent is responding with Brainstorm to find force of will or even some kind of other interaction, and he failed, and so we took game 2. To game 3, we can consider bringing in maybe surgical extraction because our opponent bought it in Orim's Chant or has Orim's Chant, so he's pretty combo orientated at this point. But I decided to just run the same configuration. It's kind of bias, but I think I really have to brought in more surgical extraction because our opponent showed us Orim's Chant. He's not so much committed to the creature plan with Stoneforge Mystic or just getting a fair game with Urza Saga. So he's really an all-in combo deck. So I think surgical extraction would have been 1 more layer of protection, especially on the draw. So I think I missed it here, and that is some experience to make. But we have a strong opening with Dragon Rage Chandler. We have Lightning Bolt, Unholy Heat. Our opponent has the removal for the Dragon Rage Chandler. So our plan here is to execute now as threat our Murktide Regent. And for this one, we are just going to play land, and so that we have Lightning Bolt up, Unholy Heat up, and can play Brainstorm at the end step and feed our graveyard. And we find a good Brainstorm. It's okay, we have the fetch land available, and we have 3 cards in our yard, each with a different type. So I'm just here considering how to time it. We can fetch for Surveillant, but I think pondering first is okay. It's a totally brick. We shuffle, we draw another Unholy Heat, and here I'm just going for a so-called normal land and applying the first Murktide Regent and hope it will stick. And even if the game will develop, we have another Murktide Regent, but our opponent has the answer in form of a second Swords to Plowshares. It's okay, we have another one, but we have to play our spells to develop it. Keep in mind that our Surveillant is still in the deck, so I'm opting here for dealing with the Construct token. We have 1 Unholy Heat, so we can spend at least 1. It will feed our graveyard and we can make the Surveil trigger. So I'm just going to heat for 2 damage to deal with the construct which has no summoning sickness. And I'm going to Surveil to see our options on the next turn. We saw a Flooded Strand and Binted to the graveyard. And our opponent has just stick the token with Shuko as a threat. And here we see Brainstorm, Delver of Secrets, and Island. So you can make an argument for taking the Delver, but here I'm looking for more spicy action. So I do not think at this stage of the game Delver will just deal it. And I'm really opting hard for the Murktide Regent here because it applies a more pressure. And for that reason, I shuffled the Ponder, and here is Murktide number 2. We have a backup with Unholy Heat and Lightning Bolt if our opponent will execute a combo. We will not deal with the Construct token. We have the faster clock, we have the higher life total, so if nothing will change, we will win those kind of clockways. Here's the Tamio, and here I'm really hard considering what to do with the Tamio. Because our opponent has a fetch land up, so I'm going to attack with the Murktide to see if any jump block is happening. And then we have 6 mana, so we can make a Force of Will hardcast, or keep Unholy Heat or Lightning Bolt up. And here I'm going to take the risk of bolting down the Tamio, because I do not want to give our opponent more cards in hand. It's always a spicy one. Our opponent is going to surveil, and we only have now one line of backup. We have going for Force of Will or Unholy Heat. Maybe it's better to not deal with Tamio, but I had a feeling that if our opponent gets another turn, get a clue attack, the advantage is to hide it. He found an answer, because he didn't went for the combo last turn. That was my feeling here. We see an Underground Sea, and we see a Cephalid Breakfast. At this point, I'm really thinking hard whether to deal with it on the board with Unholy Heat and Force of Will. To make an argument, Force of Will maybe run into days, and here I decided to go for the Unholy Heat. And our opponent has the Hydroblast, so if we went with the Force of Will, we could maybe counter it. We don't know the exactly hand of our opponent, but here it would be better to go with the Force of Will to keep against Hydroblast. And now we just go to the motions, see if Tassa's Oracle is in hand. It's a little bit tedious, but it's worth the percentage to just play through and see if our opponent has a brick here. Otherwise, we just lost the game. So I think it's okay to invest that minute to see if Tassa's Oracle is really in the deck and not in the hand. And herefore, I'm really thinking about the play with the Force of Will. But I think it's okay. You make those kind of decisions. Sometimes they are good, sometimes they are bad. And here, if I thought on Hydroblast, it would be better to play the Force of Will.